Good morning. Today is the 23rd of January, 2024. My name is David Pyle. I'm interviewing John S. Partilla and at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado as part of the Remembering Our Veterans program. So, John Partilla, thank you for taking time today.
Thank you, David. Thanks for the invitation from the team.
Glad that you're here and that you're willing to share your information, sir, your life. So if you would, John, let's begin with your childhood, or whatever, it's like where you grew up. And
Well, let me see. That was 77 years ago.
Okay.
Okay, let's start with my birthday. My birthday is December 7th,
Yep.
1946. Maybe some people don't know what December 7th was, but
The day of infamy.
well, there it is. And born and raised in Pittsburgh, the suburbs, and the eastern suburbs, and it's called the Mon Valley. And it's called the Mon Valley because of the Monongahela River. And it's a very ethnic community, and I've stayed there all of my life. And that's basically my young childhood. Went to public schools, and then had an urge to leave the house, and the leaving of the house was joining the Marines.
So it says that you joined at 16?
Well, I joined at 16 with my parents' consent in my junior year of high school. I was young.
Yeah.
And then at 17, when I graduated from high school, I went immediately to boot camp. Now, here I am, 77, and it's been 60 years since boot camp.
Right.
And there's where I am now at the Rocky Mountain Medical Center.
You've come a long way.
You know what? I think everybody's come a long way, but I don't know where time has gone. When I look at 60 years, it's a blink of an eye. And I do that sharing with people for them to understand. It is the blink of the eye.
Yeah. So what motivated you to join the military?
I had a very good friend whose name was Don Aiken. And there was another man, his name was Chuck Martin. They were the only two Marines in our church, veterans from World War II. Everybody else was the Army, Air Corps, Army, Navy, and the Air Corps, and they just said, you know what? I think you should join the Marines. Sonny was my nickname. I was 16. And I says, sure, why not? And I did. My parents signed on the paper and left at 17, and that's basically how I got started in the Marine Corps.
So, let's see. I was just reading that your father was a veteran and that he fought at the Battle of the Bulge.
He was a World War II veteran. He was the oldest man to be drafted from Pittsburgh, and he was in his late 30s, and ended up, because he could speak Slovak, he was taken in as an interpreter, and ended up in the third or fourth wave at Normandy, or the fourth day at Normandy, and then was assigned to George Patton and the 4th Armored Division and fought in the Battle of the Bulge. So he was definitely a very, very successful 35-year-old PFC in World War II at Normandy and then the Battle of the Bulge.
That's amazing. It must have had a rather profound effect on him, did it not?
Well, what's amazing, David, is that he never talked about it.
No, that's where I was going with that.
He never spoke of World War II. He never spoke of benefits. He never spoke of other veterans. But at the same period of time, he went to England on one of the queens, either Elizabeth or Mary. They gutted it and turned it into a troop ship.
Right.
And my wife, who came from Switzerland in 1951, came back on the same ship to this country. And I look at is it a coincidence? I don't know, but being married for 56 years and what my dad endured going over to Europe, and my wife and her family coming here as immigrants, it's just an interesting story of life.
So I'm curious, and in terms of influencing you, in terms of the decisions that you made so early on, it's like, and him not talking about it with you, did he say anything about your desire to go into the Marines? Or
no, I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
And we could not afford college, and
Yeah.
we really didn't have the background or the support needed from people that are empathetic, supportive, and knowledgeable. And so he says, sure, it's either, go into the steel mill and work like he did for 40 years. And my grandfather, my grandfather who worked for Andrew Carnegie in the steel mills in the Mon Valley of Pittsburgh. But no, he never did not say, you don't want to go to the Marines, you want to go to the Army. And he never basically wanted to stop me other than, love me and said, good luck, son. It'll help you. And that's basically it. That the being in the military will help you. So.
Well, so you chose the Marines then primarily because everybody else had been in the other services.
Everybody else, and
you
these
didn't know
two
too many
men,
Marines,
and these two other men in our church, basically fathers, were very instrumental in pushing me to, always faithful, the good, the few, and everybody. So that was it. Don and Chuck.
Well, so you went in at 17. You did your basic training?
Did my basic training in at Parris Island, South Carolina, and then North Carolina. That was in 1964.
Okay.
And then immediately went on to infantry training, and then ended up being assigned to an armor second anti-tank battalion, and ended up at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
And from there, then you were down at Santo Domingo?
Well, it was interesting because we didn't know very much about anything at the age of 17 that I was, or 18. We were more followers than leaders. And they deployed us to be the first troops to land in the Dominican Republic we were evacuating American independence from the polo grounds. And it was I think the dictator's name was Trujillo.
Right.
And we landed in the Dominican Republic and went right to the polo grounds and helped take all the American independence out of Santo Domingo, or the Dominican Republic. And then we took over and helped protect the embassy. So
you were part of the first wave then?
We were the first wave. I got some pictures that just surprised me. That my wife basically, when she was teaching in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, found pictures from Newsweek magazine, and there I am in Newsweek magazine. And I never knew. I didn't even know about Newsweek magazine, to be very honest with you. And so we end up she ends up cutting out some pictures from Newsweek magazine. And then recently we took a cruise and we're in the Dominican Republic. And so I just had to look at this, do some research while I was sitting on ship, and found the film library for Newsweek magazine. And there I am in 2 pictures. And it was just very, very interesting. So let me just show you one real quick. Here's one. Here's when we're leaving, basically on April 29th, 1965. I was now 18. And there's, another one right here from Newsweek magazine. And there I am, and it's like...
You're in the tank there?
Yes, exactly. And it was chaos, confusion, and quicksand.
How about if we show that to the camera? Can we...
Oh.
Can you bring that over in front of you, maybe?
Is that okay?
Hold that for a second. There you go.
What about the other one? Were you able to show that one?
Yeah. Can you come back to that one and maybe get the other one? Let's see where.
That's Vietnam. Is it over there?
Oh, right here.
Oh, here I am. Here's another picture.
Yeah.
This is basically deploying with all the other Marines. So that was my first introduction to.
So this is when you were landing. Then you actually landed on the beaches there.
We landed on the beaches and went right to the polo fields, and I didn't know, and I didn't know what polo was really either, but went there, and that's where we brought all of the American dependents, and helicopters come in, set up the perimeter, and starting loading them out for I think it was the Boxer was the name of the ship we were sending them to.
That's amazing. That's like Well, not a lot of folks know about the DR, Dominican Republic, and remember that. And,
Well,
it
at the
was
same
like
period,
Vietnam was just taking off.
well,
and-
that's exactly right, David. Vietnam
Yeah.
was just taking off,
Yeah.
and we went right from there then, back to the United States and started deploying for Vietnam. And once again, I was 18, and sure, I said, oh yeah, and they were looking for volunteers. So as I volunteered for the Marines, I volunteered to go to Vietnam and became one of the first groups to land in Vietnam in 1965. Again,
Da Nang,
we landed at Chu Lai.
July.
There is such a thing as China Beach. It's real.
Right.
And now it's one of the most picturesque places and beaches in Vietnam in the world. And when we landed there was nothing there. But this is where we ended up, and then we started deploying from there. So, yeah, interesting experience for an 18-year-old.
No bet. It's I have to pause. I'm reviewing my own memories of that period, and it's like as we're talking about that.
Yeah,
and,
that's
all
common.
that sort of coming back there. And so, were you guys under fire when you first went in there? Or?
No, we were under fire once we evacuated or set up the perimeter at the polo grounds and the soccer fields there. We were not under fire. We loaded all of the all the American dependents onto helicopters, took them out to the Boxer, I think it was, and then we went into the town toward toward another area that we set up the perimeter for the other military that was coming in, and that's where we took fire. Up there, we took continual sniper fire, and it's bizarre, but I didn't know any of this and didn't really. How can I say this? I received a letter from my lieutenant commending me on my actions as under daily sniper fire, and yet I don't remember daily sniper fire. And when I look at this Newsweek picture, I wondered what was I thinking about, being so high on these vehicles. So, but anyway, I thank Lieutenant Kelso, who wrote the letter for my meritorious promotion to then Lance Corporal. So I go from PSC to Lance Corporal.
Yeah, congratulations, a major.
Thanks. It was a major accomplishment for an 18-year-old.
That's incredible.
But David, one more thing. There were so few experienced people in combat. And it was just like, World War II. The men and women, they were not experienced in combat. And then we were not experienced in combat, and then it just goes into Vietnam. You weren't experienced in combat, but here we are, all as veterans, sitting around and some reminiscing and some not. But it's all part of our life and our foundations.
What about your NCOs? Were like they Korean vets or anything? Did they had combat experience there?
No, none. What was amazing was the Corporal Gray was the oldest NCO that we had there. And his experience was the Bay of Pigs invasion. So there was the difference. You go from the Bay of Pigs invasion and Mr. Kennedy,
Right.
Into, Santo Domingo, into Vietnam. And it just seems like it's never stopped since then in some form or fashion. Yeah.
Going back to Santo Domingo for a moment, did you come under fire there? Was
Oh,
there
yes.
Quite a bit of.
It was the sniper fire.
Yeah.
There were, if I'm not mistaken, 8 Marines died there.
Okay.
But no, it was the continual sniper fire.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how. There's no real comparison there to that in Vietnam. I mean, you Marines really got hit. I mean, you were taking it really.
Well,
as I recall during that period, particularly, I mean, 65 to 68.
Yes.
That whole.
Well, like we landed there in August of '65.
Yeah.
Went over by ship. By the time we were leaving, they were now basically flying men and women over. But basically, we went over by ship in 1965, right to China Beach, to Chu Lai. And then from Chu Lai, we just progressed north to Da Nang. Then from Da Nang, we started going to heading up toward Phu Bai and the DMZ. We just continued to progress north toward the DMZ, is what we did.
Did you come in on these landing craft then?
Yes.
Drop
yeah, exactly.
That whole thing? Wow.
Exactly. So that's how it was in Santo Domingo, and that's how it was in Chu Lai.
Right.
And then, everything, we spent most of our times in Vietnam running convoys and doing sweeps heading north
Yeah.
toward the DMZ. So it was an interesting time in my life. Very quickly, I learned even more about surviving and the importance of teamwork and commitment from others. And then I was wounded in July of 1966, just light flesh wound. And then my best friend, while I was there, became a POW, still missing in action to this day. So he became missing in action July 6, 1966. And when I see the POW and the MIA flag, it still means something to me.
No, absolutely. I can imagine.
Yeah. But once again, so I go from 17 to 18 to combat to 19 to combat. I end up getting a meritorious promotion to, I end up being promoted to corporal, and then I get a meritorious promotion to sergeant. And then
While you were there?
yes,
In Nam?
yes,
Yeah.
and then came back from Vietnam on a plane. Now the Northeast Orient Airlines
Right.
flew us back to to Okinawa and then back to the United States. That's basically my combat experience.
So you primarily were infantry, grunt, whatever.
Well, it was basically, in Ontos, it's called the Thing, and we ran all the sweeps. So we were the first ones in the skirmishes to go out, on our sweeps with these, as they called the Thing, horse marines we were called. And it was just a very, very interesting time in my life, as it was for so many men and women, specifically men. So it's good. It was an experience. And then
I would say a profound experience, and don't you think, in terms of...
Well, it was another, David, it was another foundation or another brick in my foundation. And I do believe that wholeheartedly, that, volunteering for the military, and at the same period of time, it was just another brick that went into this foundation that my parents gave me, meaning life and love, and a roof over my head, into the discipline that I needed, the structure that I needed for being a veteran, for being in the military. It gave me structure and substance.
Were you kind of a wild kid before you went in?
I was the middle child out of three. Yeah. So with the older sister and the younger sister, I was probably a little bit challenging to my parents. And that's why they said, we'll take you to the bus station. And we went.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Thank you for life and taking me to the bus station. The life that I have. But no, it is. It is. I can truthfully say it's the bricks that we stand on. The Marine Corps is a brick. Combat was a brick. Camaraderie was a brick. There's very, very few bricks in my foundation that I didn't earn and have to put there. And helping other people and sharing if possible.
Man, that's I'm just remembering again that whole period, and all these memories come flashing back.
And that's the similarity that we have.
Yeah, I know.
That common bond that everybody has is we're not going to escape things.
No, that's like. So you went from a lance corporal to a sergeant during that time.
Yes.
So were you like a squad leader then as well? Or?
Well, I was a platoon commander.
Platoon commander.
So I was a platoon commander for the Ontos, and then when I came back, they sent me right out to the rifle range, and I was a marksmanship training instructor at the range there in Camp Lejeune. And
were they using M14s at that time?
Yes, M14s.
Yeah.
M14s was what we were still using then, and they were just deploying the new types of weapons from the M16s into Vietnam. And then from the being a marksmanship training instructor, they sent me over to a training platoon commander, where we now had a company, I think it was, and we had 4 platoons, in the company, and I was responsible for being the commander of these Marines to finish their basic infantry training.
Right.
And then
this is like AIT or something?
Exactly, advanced infantry training.
Right.
That's what it is, all similar.
Yeah.
And then they send me from there to help prepare the Marines, for going to Vietnam. And that's where some of the things surfaced that I still struggle with is, did I really prepare these men enough, for Vietnam in 1968? Because it was building up rapidly.
No, that whole period was just one.
It was crazy.
Grew exponentially.
And now, but I did have a very, very good friend, Bob, who's much older than I. Well, not much older, but he's a little bit older than I am. And he was from Pittsburgh, along with the Pittsburgh Pirates reservists came in. And I ended up training the Pittsburgh Pirates. And his name was Richie Hebner and David Cash were Pirates. So I ended up training them. And then my friend Bob Fragasso. And he assured me that I prepared them. And I said, thank you. I needed to hear that, because I have kept very, very little communications with anybody that I trained.
Right.
The men I was stationed with was a different story. I still have that camaraderie there.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. Now, so this, was it like a jungle warfare school that you ended up doing, kind of thing?
No, it was basically just advanced infantry training. Just basically, giving them the discipline, the survival discipline that they needed.
Well,
for night marches. That I actually got a platoon lost at night in camp one time, so I struggle with navigation sometimes. But we survived.
So that's one of your amusing events or humorous events?
You know what? If there's an amusing event, it's when I took everybody out. We flew out in the helicopters.
Yeah.
They dropped us off at the LZ, and fortunately Bob was there, and Bob helped me navigating the night compass march. But in Vietnam, I had no problems. It was when I came back, I got lost.
Well, better there than
exactly.
That's incredible. But, so, what is your most vivid memory of your experience in service there?
Probably the camaraderie, and the diversity, and meeting so many men from all over the United States, who we were all there together, whether it be San Domingo or Vietnam or back in Camp Lejeune, that were pretty much self-disciplined, but benefited by the structure of the military. So I can truthfully say, it's nice to be able to call somebody in New York or South Carolina now that I was stationed with, and find out that we're all similar, and we're still all similar in some form or fashion, and it just works. It's something that once again that I needed. Mm-hmm. At a young age, you don't know that it's the same color blood inside. Skins are different, races are different, right. Creeds, but no, it's good, that camaraderie.
Well, so in combat, what about combat then, in terms of processing your experiences from that?
Well, that's interesting.
Can we talk about that?
Sure, real quick. I mean, basically, I still struggle at night. I'm probably overprotective. But when you find out that there's no options, and there's no lights at night, and there's no hot food, and when it rains, and when you go on patrol, you go on patrol, and when you go on a sweep, you go on a sweep. And I'll never forget, basically, our corpsman, thank goodness for corpsman, said, get over here, corporal. And I ran over, and he says, help me stabilize this man, this Marine, which we did. We're waiting for the helicopters to come in to evacuate the wounded, and just holding another man, comforting him. And I'll never forget, and this corpsman said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. He says, remember what they taught you? I said, what's that? And he says, the 3 life-saving steps. And I says, right off the bat, it came in, stop the bleeding, critique the wound, treat for shock. And that was an almost continual thing that was going through my mind. And it's still there today, those events and the copters coming in, and loading, the fellow Marines on the helicopters in baskets. We didn't have things. We had wicker baskets to load them on the copters with, and throwing their rifles onto the helicopters, and then waving them off with smoke for them to leave. And that's probably the most vivid, other than the darkness that I still struggle with. I don't struggle with, I feel proud of my actions and the other men that I served with, their actions. But that's probably, the biggest thing in combat that you learn is there's no life, there's no options. It's going to happen, and you just have to go do it. You made a promise to somebody, go do it. And that's pretty much where I am to this day. Whether it's, and I wouldn't have never got that if I wouldn't have been in the military. I know that. I've never got that. So combat experiences don't bother me, other than I know what happened, but like I said, I look at 77 and I look back and say, that was 60 years ago. But it's still vivid. It's still real.
I'm sure.
So
it's like, there's life-changing, life-transformative experiences, I think, and for an 18-year-old, it's like, it's pretty hard to process that kind of thing, I think,
Well, David, it is.
Yeah.
You don't have so much in your life to prepare you for whatever those things are. It's really nothing. Why are we here? My mom and my dad. But it's very, very tough. It's very, very tough. Looking. I mean, I started out at school. I got out under the VA bill, under the GI bill.
Yeah.
$30 a credit. It was wonderful. $10 a credit. And at the same period of time, there's all of these men walking around with black armbands on, protesting the war. They all have long hair. I'm down there with short hair. They're saying, I can't believe, that you were a veteran at your age. And I have to say, yeah, I was. And you're against the war? And I says, no, I can't be.
For me, I mean, this is around 68 that we're talking about,
Sure.
and just after that,
Yeah.
because I went to school then. I worked for a couple of years after I got out at a steel mill.
Mm-hmm.
And, but when I went back to school, and of course this whole thing was still ongoing, but not only acclimating, leaving the service and coming back to to the world, as it were, and and going to school and being surrounded by that and that kind of environment. And how did that affect you? I mean, what were your feelings? Do you feel alienated? Do you feel
I wasn't alienated, but I did withdraw.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I am today in life. There's only so many things that everybody has an opinion, but it took me 60 years to really, really understand that we all have opinions. There's the right, there's the wrong. Who knows what they are? And at the same period of time, I'm watching all of these demonstrations on TV, and listening to all of them, and basically avoiding. I withdrew to my own protective world, which was more avoidance, and not trying to save the world, turn things into something that it wasn't. Just didn't. I couldn't do it. But it was interesting to see that that sometimes we're in the same positions to this day. That's all. But going to school and then they were dropping classes at night because they couldn't get professors. So the University of Pittsburgh are dropping classes at night, and I'm saying, wow. And then here I am saying, I'm back. I'm 21, got married, starting school. Once again, everybody's leaving.
So you got married at 21?
Yes. I've been married 56 years, my wife and I. I started school in 68, mechanical drafting and design.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got hired by U.S. Steel, who was...
I worked for U.S. Steel.
There you go. So I worked for U.S. Steel. Who didn't work for U.S. Steel? And then at the same period of time, then I start civil engineering and courses at night. Now they drop all of those courses at night. I'm saying, whatever. So still working for U.S. Steel. And
How long were you with U.S. Steel?
17 years.
Is that right?
Yeah. 17 years I paid with U.S. Steel.
Did you work on a line or?
No, basically I did drafting. Okay. I was their transitman in the surveying corps that I learned through the civil engineering. and started designing building. I was a building inspector, I was a bridge inspector, did a lot of climbing, and went from that to building some corporate buildings they were consolidating a lot of communities, a lot of functions. They decentralized engineering, they centralized engineering, they sent them to the plants, they sent them back, and then it was like, okay, now we got to start bringing people in-house again. So we started building headquarter buildings, and that's what I was doing. And then I ended up with U.S. Steel in their industrial engineering department, because they were doing time studies. How long does it take to build a railroad, 1 mile of rail? How long does it take to spike? How long does it take to do these different things? And had a great career with U.S. Steel. Great career with them. All because, and every penny, including my class rings, were all paid for by the VA. My final payment went to get my
Well, and
class.
I wanted to ask you more about that. I mean, is there any time where you actually went in as a full-time student, or were you?
The first 18 months, or the first 16 months, I was a full-time student.
No.
Then the rest was all at night after that. Then, started U.S. Steel right after that, married, and started night school after seeing that I needed more civil engineering than mechanical engineering at the railroads. And then started a night school and did it. And once again, the VA was very blessed. They picked up everything, all of my education. And very fortunate, but I really didn't accept any type of health care at that period of time, because I didn't need any. I thought I didn't need any. And there really wasn't anything that was being offered, truthfully.
No, it was pretty limited, I agree.
Yes.
No. We parallel each other pretty closely.
That's scary. Well, that's why I say, what is it? What did they call that? Kevin Bacon did that thing about 10 seconds or 10 degrees of
separation, whatever. Yeah. So what do you think? Let's see. Let's think. So what was the best part of your service experience there?
The best part was that, once again, I think, David, that it was the commitment, the duty, knowing you had the perseverance of getting things, the maturity. It wasn't an event. It was all of the events, basically, and my own perseverance, along with others who aren't as fortunate as I, and a lot of them are gone. And it's basically, the perseverance of just saying, you know what, this is only a step. Let's get on, with life now, which I did, with my wife and I, and our kids. That was good.
Well, so let's see. Were you awarded any medals or citations for your service?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to?
I have. This could
that?
be funny or it couldn't be funny. Right. I have probably. I returned from Vietnam.
No.
And with all the money I saved, bought a car. My father says, you aren't going to get a Corvette because you'll kill yourself in that. No, I just came back from Vietnam. So I bought a Dodge Charger. So I get all of my, I'm reporting into Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And I'm standing there into the office with the gunnery sergeant and the officer of the day. And I had 9 commendations on my chest, along with Purple Heart, Navy Unit Commendation, Presidential Unit Citation, Combat Action, just so much stuff that I was unbelievable. And like I said, I was now 20. And the gunnery sergeant said to me,
"Kid."
He did. He says, "Kid, is all of that stuff real? Where did you come from?" And I says, "Vietnam, sir."
Here we are. I think we want to get a shot of this. Pardon? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Let's see. Go back here. There we are.
So the gunnery sergeant says, "Where did you come from?" And I says, "Vietnam, sir." And he says, "Now you have to." The officer today was a second lieutenant right out of Quantico.
Yeah.
Okay. He's the same age as I am almost. He's 2 years older than I'm 20. And the gunnery sergeant must be in his 50s, because promotions weren't as easy then as they are when I came back from Vietnam. And he says, "Oh, that stuff's for real?" I says, "Yes, sir." So now he calls. He says, "Let me see your orders." So I give him my orders. He now calls the captain in, the company commander. He says, "Sir, Captain, could you please step out here? We have a new sergeant coming in." captain came out and he looked at me and he says, "Boy,
Boy.
where'd that come from?" And I says, "Yes, sir. That I just came from Pennsylvania, from Pittsburgh." He says, "No, where?" He says, "Where'd that come from?" And I says, "It came from Vietnam, sir. Santo Domingo too." And he says, "Where?" He says, "Santo Domingo." He really wasn't aware of
What's that?
But he was 2 years older than I was as the captain, as the company commander.
Yeah.
Then the officer there. So that was probably the funniest thing, that at least I thought was funny, because it brought a perspective to my life. And I said, I am young. What just happened?
However,
Yeah. I had some things. I had some baggage that I carried too, at the same period of time.
particularly with those second lieutenants, just
Oh,
newly
yeah.
commissioned and
Yes. Yes. Newly commissioned and everything else, knowing where they were going. They were heading for Vietnam. And I've already been back.
that's funny and interesting. Okay. So let's see. So we talked about your time at U.S. Steel. It's like you said 17 years there?
Yeah,
something?
17 years, and then they downsized and said everybody
Right,
over
right,
the age of
yeah,
50,
yeah, I remember.
55, get rid of them.
Yeah. What happened after that then?
Well, after that, basically, I got a call from a friend who said, "What are you doing?" I says, "Well, looking for a job." I turned, it was a good severance package, and I said, "I'm looking for a job." And he said, "What are you looking for?" I said, "Project management, construction, design, build, whatever." He says, "Well, we're looking for one project manager, and to help construct banks." He says, "Do you think you could build a bank?" I says, which I never did. I says, "But sure, whether you build a bridge or you build a building, it's just
the same.
It's the same thing, except you have a vault in it."
Right.
And so I ended up out of many, many candidates. And here's how I started, was with Pittsburgh National Bank. We only had 300 and some offices, or 200 and some offices then. And they started buying banks and building banks. And I had my final interview and with the real estate department to build banks, the project manager. And they said, "John, I see you have a beard. There's only one other man in the bank that has a beard." I says, "Well, I guess I'm going to be two." And I was. They hired me because I wasn't going to shave my beard after what I had been through and everything else. I wasn't going to step into that suit model, which I did carry a briefcase, but I did have a beard, and I kept that. And I kept my long hair too.
This was back in the 80s.
This is the 80s. Yeah, in the middle of the 80s. So then I end up, building and designing and building banks, and then ended up with their mergers and acquisition teams, got some building awards, for new facilities in Pittsburgh and new technology, and was very fortunate. And I've been very fortunate in my career. I really enjoyed U.S. Steel, and I really enjoyed now PNC Bank, and I enjoyed, going into consulting stuff. I ended up ending my career as a consultant.
Again, I worked at U.S. Steel for about 2.5, 3 years there, as a kid after I got out of the Army there.
Mhm.
And, and so I knew, this was at a plant in Joliet, Illinois.
I was with the EJ&E Railroad.
Well, I didn't work at the EJ&E. I also did the Santa Fe, but that's another story. Where I was going with this, that I was just thinking when they closed that plant, because that had been a huge part of
Sure.
Joliet,
Yep.
Joliet's history there,
Yes.
And I got a lot of guys were, profoundly affected in terms of, it's
Of
like
course.
the whole Rust Belt thing that had evolved out of that period,
Mhm.
and all the devastation that went along there.
Yes.
But you were fortunate that you got a separation package, like,
Right.
yeah.
A lot of them didn't, David,
They
and
did
that's
not.
unfortunate.
No, exactly. Like, and it, dare I say, it not only profoundly affected, it even destroyed some little lives, I think,
Well,
and
it's where I finally accepted, David, PTSD was in the workplace.
right,
It wasn't just as a veteran.
right.
Yet these men were veterans
Right.
and women were veterans of the steel industry. And that's where I finally ended up with really understanding and seeing more about the importance of PTSD and
Right.
help. So.
Well, and here, that kind of is a pretty good segue here to your working with grief, and how about if we go into that? Shall we
Sure.
look at this? You've written 4 books here,
Well, I've written 3 and I'm starting my 4th.
All right. Well, there you go. In any case, let's talk about that and what sort of led you into that whole thing.
It was the death of our son, Jason.
Mhm.
And I thought that I had seen everything and seen too much for an 18-year-old from a 17 to a 21-year-old. I think I had experienced more, seen more, and there is no doubt that I was not prepared, just like Vietnam, for a change
Mhm.
in my life. It's fortunate to come back. Well, our son was a senior in college, Jason, and get a phone call. No, I got to wake up to a knock on a door, and like 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's a state policeman standing there saying, "Mr. Partilla." I said, "Yes." He says, "I have bad news," and it was like, "Someone stole our car?" And he said, "No, your son just was killed." I was like, "What?" And I regained my composure, and he says, "You're going to be called shortly by the Virginia police, informing you of what has happened in detail, but I just want to prepare you for that call." And I said, "Thank you, Sergeant." And he left. And it was like, wow. So now I thought I had seen everything. I had seen nothing, as opposed to the death of your child or your partner or your spouse or your friend or whomever. But there's something special about the death of a child. So automatically I started, uh, I started writing down things because I hadn't told my wife yet or my son. So I started writing down time, date, sergeant. This is what he said. And then I started journaling. Exactly back to Vietnam when I journaled. There I am again. I'm journaling. Locations, positions, times, events, this person's name, this person's name. Yet I'm a civilian. So after, struggling, which everybody does in grief in some form or fashion, I started compiling my notes about things one day. And my wife asked me what I'm doing. I said, "I'm just looking through these old notes." And she said, "Oh, okay, would you mind if we go on a cruise?" I says, "No, just to escape. I wanted to escape." And so she bought me a quadrille pad and pencils and colored pencils and markers. And I started writing a book on a ship about grief. It was a perfect place. It was by myself sitting there. The ocean is therapeutic. The water is therapeutic, just like it was in Vietnam and in Santo Domingo. It's all therapeutic. And I started laying out topics about things. And that's how I got started writing a book on grief. And it's a self-help book because I didn't have the help I needed. I didn't get it from the church.
I'll tell you, let's talk about that for
Sure.
a second. I mean, you didn't go into therapy or you
No.
didn't have any counseling or
No.
anything like that in terms of processing this grief other than on your own.
No.
Like that.
But then, David, a man at Pittsburgh National Bank said to me, he says, "John," he was my manager then, John Domer, and he said, you know that there's some help here. Now, the VA didn't, I wasn't in touch with the VA.
Mhm.
He says, "You know that we have something here in our HR department about grief support." I says, "No." And he says, "Changes." I said, "I didn't know that." So Blue Cross Blue Shield, big name then,
Right.
sets me up, or my wife and my youngest son and I, with a counselor. Now, was this man qualified? Well, of course he was. But did he experience what I experienced? The answer was no. Okay, this is where I went back to my military. And all of a sudden I went back to the people that I had talked to that had friends that had, lost other friends, other comrades, and started sharing and talking with them. And then I started trying to read. And I couldn't find a book that was the answer I was looking for. And then, I found this book that was called When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Mhm.
And I read it. And it was like, wow, this is simple. Bad things do happen. And that's how I started, writing my book. So, this is Jason, basically.
Now here, let's hold it up here. He's a good-looking kid.
20
Like
years, 20 years old, senior at West Virginia University, landscape architecture.
Yeah.
And I wrote this book, and it's the art of grieving.
Mhm.
Well, it's because I took a lot of pictures. My wife took a lot of pictures. I like being alone in the woods,
Mhm.
taking pictures. So, it says a book for every coffee table, for every backpack, purse, or briefcase, a book for every family, a morning in where we used to live, a book for giving and keeping. Then I ended up with saying a survivor's manual for grief. And it was a survivor's manual. It helped me survive. And then I said, it's illustrated by my life, my experiences, and my photography. But when I think about, the importance of sharing and then talking to this man after I laid this whole book out, and the author or the publisher says, John, we can save a ton of money by printing this in black and white
Right.
as opposed to color. And I said, but grief's colorful. He says, no, it's not. I says, no, there is no such thing as black and white in grief. But I printed it this way because of the cost of it. And then basically got some really good references from some people, from after 40 years in the field, I can finally hand my clients a tool rather than just hold their hand and speechless empathy. Clinical director, Paul Grzybowski, Craig Academy. This beautiful book is long overdue. Grieving can finally be seen in full color, personalized, a must-help for all who are grieving. In charge of the executive director of the Good Grief Center of Pittsburgh. I found this book loaded with heartfelt truisms that I think should be helpful with grieving people. I feel that the materials is appropriate for any given point in the grieving process because we change so often when we were in grief. This book can be read again and again. Sandy Conway, grief counselor at the high school. And it's just something that I really, really liked a lot.
Yeah.
And it helped. And then I closed it with the death of my son's dog. Okay, and I think of pets. And it says, J-Dog, thank you for always running in front and looking back to see me if I was okay. Thank you for being my companion. Thank you for keeping me warm at night. Thank you for never complaining. Thank you for all of the being there in my life and always being there for me. I will see you again. I mean, the importance of grief and how I got started was, once again, it was from the military. But then it blossomed into something that is civilian. And now to this day, it's not my vocation, is being an author.
Let's talk about this for a second, even in terms of, even back when you were a kid and now and all that, and, dealing with life and death there, and the effect that it had on you at that time, maybe a lot of it was buried, I don't know, but even as you went forward then, and when your son then died in this accident, and what had been both the grief of that, but even what was this buried grief, even maybe that you had as well. I mean, this is a lot of processing to do there, and I'm sure that it took you through lots of different places inside.
Oh, it did, David. And what was interesting was it actually softened my grief that I had pent up. And now I started talking for the first time about Vietnam to people. I never talked about it. It's like my dad. Throw your bag upstairs in the attic and leave it alone and get back to work. Get back to school. So I basically really, really, how can I say this? I learned from it. I became a better person with, God, it's even brutal to say, with what I experienced with the death of our son. I have people coming up that I share with, for suicides. And they say, I can't believe that my son committed suicide. And I said, please, just do me a favor. Don't say committed. He died of suicide. He didn't willingly commit to suicide. There's other things, and that goes right back to what you said. If I would not have had my experiences and what I tried to inform and educate myself with my son's death, I probably wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have gotten out of Vietnam and started talking about that to people and not being afraid to share about it in Santo Domingo.
Yeah, I would think that would open your heart immeasurably.
It does.
not only the pain, the sorrow, but the rage. I mean, that
Well,
did you find yourself in any?
oh, of course. We went through the trials.
Sure.
We went through the trials. We
Yeah.
fly back and forth to Virginia Beach going through trials. We have reporters wanting to talk to us as we're exiting the courthouse.
Yeah.
And it's like, don't you get it? And the answer is no.
Right.
They don't get it.
Right. Right.
It's news to them.
Right.
It's not our son. It's not real. But no, I pride myself with learning the word empathy. And so many people just don't understand how easy it is to be empathetic. And when you're not, no matter what, I say in the book, you know what? You can lose your purse. You can lose your car keys. You can have an argument with your spouse. You're going to go through grief. You're going to fail a test. You're going to go through grief. But at the same period of time, there is a way to help someone, and yourself at the same period of time.
Well, sometimes you have to get the help before you can give it.
Exactly. Oh, exactly.
And I guess that in terms of really working with and working through, I'm thinking about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Yes.
You've read her work.
Yes.
And are familiar with that whole
Yes.
thing, and
Yes.
various stages involved in that. And so, well, I'm sure that's a long journey. How long has it been since your son died?
Jason died 30 years ago this year, 30th anniversary. He would have been 50 now. And I look at that and I say, it's a blink of the eye. It really is a blink of the eye. So, and if people are willing to sit and listen and share and get some help if possible, I feel sorry for the people that don't have the help that they need. I over the years, my grief softened. I mean, when I look at the printing on this book and it's all bold and it's black and it's the survivor of grief, survivor's manual. I went from that to Grief Sucks by John S. Partilla. Different type of font, a friendlier type of font because my grief was softening. At the same period of time, I say, born and raised in the eastern suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, known as the Mon Valley, learned to use a Kodak 110 Instamatic in Vietnam, and starting to journal as an 18-year-old. I still believe in the KISS method for taking pictures, keeping it simple and short. My only upgrade has been to a 35 millimeter camera. Now, it's the iPhone. I don't have a 35 millimeter camera anymore. But, I say in the back of the book here to close, no matter how dark it is where you stand, there is and always will be daylight somewhere in this universe. Please enjoy the day and the night. No matter how hard it is, it's there. And then basically I went, to another book, and now I'm writing a fourth book. Let me just show you this real quick. This is this is the third book. And basically it's Grief Sucks globally in 2020. All I did was put globally in 2020 because of
the
pandemic.
Right now, absolutely.
That's the only reason.
So is this your shot here at the cover?
Yeah. Well, this is the shot of the cover, for my latest grief book. But now I'm going into something. I'm going to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And this is David.
Okay.
This is called Perseverance, Courage, Trust, and Faith. From Sunrise to Sunset.
Turn it around if you would, please. Yeah.
And then the Heart of Events Across Time. So I blended, and I'm co-writing it with a friend of mine, Stephen. So we're blending the events from sunrise to sunset in your life, and then across time. But I think of, everybody needs perseverance, courage, trust, and faith. I mean, I think of the first pioneers crossing these mountains behind us.
Sure.
No water, no food, no this, no doctors, no 7-Elevens. How do you do it? Well, all of these components are, going to be outlined in what we say are the events that have shaped everybody. And that's where I am right now in our, in my life, is this vocation of trying to help and share. Before COVID, I was, sitting and talking at the VA on Saturdays with in-house patients in the mental health group. And it's amazing to sit with these men and women, a lot younger than me and some older than me, that are still struggling.
Sure.
And the VA is doing a great job, I feel. with helping me and helping them. So, but that's definitely where I am.
So what about faith? Tell me about that. Does that play an important part of your life?
Well, I got faith from I was instructed on faith with my parents, meaning the hardcore. You go to church, you go to Sunday school, you go to this, you go to this. Well, that was more structure. But I learned faith with life's events, knowing that there has to be something better. Not a person writing a name down in a book saying, oh, David's day is today, David's done. It's his day. Because the death of my son proved that to me. The death of all of these people all over the world that's happening now is proving that. My faith is extremely important to me. It's very valuable. I believe in faith. But I do believe in perseverance. I believe in courage. I believe in trust. But faith is my biggest, probably. If I look at a foundation of life for me, I got the military, I got the block in there for the military, I got the block in there for religion, I got the block in there for marriage, for friendship, and then I start putting in one for faith, and then I build this foundation that all has to stand together based upon my belief that you have to do all this together to have a sturdy foundation. I get that from engineering. If I wouldn't have had the proper instructors telling me the importance of putting the right components into a foundation, it's not going to stand. The right components into a windscreen for a wind turbine, it's not going to stand. It takes a lot, and I learn every day. I learn every day about these different bricks that I put in my foundation. But faith is the one I got to stand on. It's just me, And some people don't have faith, that's fine. Everybody's different, but I do. I got to stand with it.
How about your family? So you and your wife and all that. You've been married
56 years.
Yeah. Long time.
Well, it is for her. Yeah.
For her.
But no, 56 years. We have a son. Jason died at 20.
Yeah.
Ian's 47, and the reason we're out here is because he married this beautiful woman. First of all, he said he couldn't stay back in Pittsburgh. He was going to go to WVU where Jason went. And he said, "I'm going west. I'm going to the mountains." Okay, so he's graduated from CSU. Met this wonderful woman, Megan, who is also at the same period of time, a wonderful woman, and they got 2 great kids. And they live over here in the community, and we are 50 minutes away from them, and it's just good. It's part of, once again, the blocks of my life. They are parts of that foundation. So 2 wonderful grandkids, Ari and Shayna, and Megan and Ian, and small family, but you know what? It's family.
Right.
And no matter if it's just 2 people, it could be a family, And so we've been here for 11 years now in Colorado. We moved from North Carolina where we retired to, but no, we've been here for 11 years and we're staying.
Yeah, you're in Denver proper here.
Yeah, we live over by the airport off of 56th Street. We reside in a 55 plus community,
okay,
which I really enjoy because of the camaraderie and the people, and once again, their life experiences. There's very little that's really, really different in people's lives. You're going to find somebody with something similar, not the looks, but the heart,
sure,
the experiences,
sure,
and the need of just of helping and sharing and just living. So that's where we're at now, and we really enjoy it. Get all my care here at the medical center. It's a wonderful destination for me to help others, whether it's just a handshake, or a smile to somebody.
Sure,
it just works.
And your wife, then, she's how's she doing through all this then as well?
As coming from Switzerland as a young girl, like I said, and being, a very, very successful, teacher, taught at the community college. Women grieve different than men. Fathers from mothers, brothers and sisters She grieves in her own way.
Mm-hmm.
I grieve in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
She has her support group. I have mine. She has her foundation that she stands on. I have mine. But I'm extremely proud of her. 56 years. Wow, that's shocking to me when I think of some people today.
No, that's for our generation. That's pretty unusual.
Well, yeah, it is. But when you think of once again that common string or fabric that runs between all of us of need, not wants,
Mm-hmm.
needs. You know, met when I was home from Vietnam. You know, in a local discotheque, if that's what they want to call it.
A bar.
A bar, exactly. It was a bar. It was a bar, but it was a discotheque.
Let's not sugarcoat it, John.
To keep her, okay, it was a bar. And, you know, that was in November of 1966, and we've been together ever since.
Really?
It works.
That's remarkable.
Thank you.
How about your involvement with the VA? Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I started with the VA because back in Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and back in the 60s, everything was so run down, you know, and not being supported. But I knew that, you know, what I was entitled to a veteran's ID card, you know. So I was proud to get a veteran's ID card with a photo on it that said Veteran Purple Heart, you know, entitlement to health care. Please check. And that's what it said, please check.
Mm-hmm.
So I started checking in and I says, I don't need this. I shunned away. You know, I had my U.S. Steel benefits, you know, which were good enough,
Right.
but not mentally. And so then I finally started talking to some people with the VA, but never with any group sessions or private sessions. But then I found a wonderful gentleman here in in Denver, and he got me involved with the DAV.
Mm-hmm.
He got me involved with a local veterans group, support group over at, is it Lowry? Is that the old base that was here? Lowry?
Lowry, yeah.
And ever since then, so for the 11 years, I've been sitting and sharing and talking with other veterans. And I get my health care here, and but I get a moral compass here that helps me, David. It really does.
Yeah, that's great, John. That's like so. There anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to discuss here?
Not at all. I just want to thank, you know, the team.
Could you talk about your research involvement since you were exposed to Agent 1?
Oh, sure, good. There were some things that came out of my community involvement with my new friend here in Denver, Jim, new neighbor. And when I start with the DAV and everything else, he started saying, John, have you signed up for any type of, you know, problems that you're having? I says, no, I don't have any problems. He says, why don't you just come to a session with me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went to the session over at Lowry. And from Lowry, I heard the term Agent Orange, which I was exposed to. I walked through the jungles with it. You know, it was unloaded on the docks. It was sprayed. It was everything imaginable at the air bases, you know, and everything. And I said, yeah, I have been exposed to that. And I did some research on it. I said, my God, they were spraying exactly in locations that I was at in Vietnam, from Chulai going north all the way up to Tam Kỳ and Phu Bai and everything else in Hawaii. And I said, wow. And then after that, I said, maybe I should be interested in doing some research on it. So I go from there then to, once again, talking to some other people. And they said, John, have you ever thought about where you are mentally? And I says, sure. Yeah, I struggle. And he says, have you ever been evaluated for any type of characteristics of PTSD? And I said, you know what? No, because after my son's death, you know, I had it. I had it because of that. But I had it phase 1 with Vietnam, phase 2 with Jason's death. So from between, you know, the help that I'm getting from the VA and group sessions that I used to go to down in Lowry, and then talking about, you know, exposure to Agent Orange, then talking about, you know, some other things, it's just been it's been a lifesaver. It's been a lifeline for me. because I know I'm not alone. Just like, with grief and the death of my son, I'm not alone. But I mean, I have sat and talked to so many veterans, at sessions that still struggle, men and women. And then at the same period of time, I've taken my book and thrown the book across the table here in the, upstairs in the mental health group. It says, I don't want to see any of this stuff. And I says, that's fine, And I says, but that's my feelings. And then I'd start talking in a book. I says, what would help you? And they says, well, what would really help me? I like music. And I says, what music calms you down? And all of a sudden, he picked up my book and started looking at the songs that I like. It's now songs that he likes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow. And we struck up a relationship then over music.
Right.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
But it's there. So, yeah, but I think that, I just thank everybody for, being able to. I thank everybody here. There, I have coming here 11 years ago and going to the old hospital, David. Now going to this new center.
Yeah.
This has to be the model, of what we are entitled to,
Mm-hmm.
but what they have delivered. And when I see so many caring volunteers, I see so many caring staff. It wasn't like that at the old hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I see people smiling. I see doctors coming out, and nurses saying, is your wife or your partner here? Do you want them here? It's just a wonderful, wonderful environment and experience. And we are blessed. I'll say I am blessed, to be able to have this facility after all these years.
I fully concur. That's like I wouldn't be here today between God and the VA. It's
Yep.
the only reason I'm here.
Yeah.
Truly.
I agree with you. Sure.
Can you talk about your involvement with MAD?
Yes. Again.
Yeah.
David, I failed to mention one of the things either, or also because of our son was killed by a drunk driver.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I are big supporters of the survivors of MAD. And, we received an award last year from the local chapter of MAD for our contribution to the survivors. And we sat at we sat with the state police. And it goes right back to my mind when the state police came to our house, and I answered the door, to the training that hopefully these men and women are getting on how to deliver a message to someone. So, I mean, Matt is really big in, my wife's and I support, mainly because of our son's death, but also the survivors and the ongoing survivors' needs,
Right.
of being exposed to Matt and the incident in your life. But no, it's big. Matt is very, very big for us.
And MAD stands for?
Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. Or should it say something like Everyone Against Drunk Drivers?
Something, yeah.
Because
not exclusive.
It's not exclusive. Yeah, Matt it's not just mothers against drunk drivers. It's
Right.
everybody that's against drunk drivers.
A few more things. Did you talk about your 100% service-related disability?
Well,
He did.
Yeah.
Sort of like, it's like, it's like,
Did we show off these photos? I don't recall.
well, here, I wanted to make sure that we had here
Yeah.
exactly, because this is,
yeah, because you have that one, you have that one.
I thought, here, this is a great shot. How about if you hold that up there and get it then and now here. There he is.
There's it. Okay.
Sergeant Partilla.
That's it. Yeah, that's good. Well, Sergeant Partilla. Well, this is Sergeant Jonas
Got your-
Partilla.
Yeah.
Vietnam, July 22nd, 1966.
Yeah,
And that went from my office to my garage now.
really, from your office to your garage.
Hanging on the wall in the garage. Yeah. Got that?
Well,
And there's a lot here. Is there anything?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm good. Thank
yeah.
you.
John, it's a pleasure, truly. I'm glad we're meeting. It's like it's
Please,
an honor and pleasure. It's
please,
like,
let's
very thoughtful.
send him my email address. If you don't
Yeah.
mind.